and I will check that the button has worked. Right, good afternoon everyone on Facebook. Hello, I can't believe it's Friday again. And welcome to a Talented People live session. Sorry we're a little bit late, we were just working through some audio issues. How are you all? I can see some people joining, so we'll let you come along while I just chat about what these sessions are, just in case you've been asleep for the last 12 weeks and haven't seen any of them. I'm not offended, I promise, at all. Not at all. We as Talented People, many of you will know as a staffing company. We find people for contracts that start, yesterday, freelancers, as well as permanent roles to start in a few months' time, development, production, management, editorial, all sorts really. But many of you guys know us from talking to you about jobs that you have, and if you're a client of ours, thank you also for watching. We work with you guys to help you find the best people for the roles that you have on the table. So we set up these sessions just to kind of come together once a week and chat about really fun stuff, important stuff, while everybody is at home and kind of trying to figure out what on earth is going on with the world right now. Some of you guys are working, many of you are not. So it feels like a nice way to kind of stay connected with what's going on. And obviously as talent people in between, what's going on in the industry and you guys, it's very nice to be able to bring these sessions to you and, see your comments. So always comment in the Facebook Live comments. We'd love to hear from you. Chuck some questions at us. Just say hello. It makes us feel loved and that you're watching and that these are good or at least useful. So welcome along again. So this session, the title has provoked quite a lot of fun and humour in the comments already, is about the worst TV that we've ever made, but what we learned from it. We've all had, pretty assorted careers and experiences across this weird and wonderful world of telly. So these three have boldly and bravely and happily come along with a good sense of humour to talk to us about the kinds of things that they have come up against in telly and how they got over those issues, or if they did or didn't. So I'm going to introduce them all separately and then we'll just start chatting about it all. So Dominique Walker. Hi, Dominique.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for coming. Dominique, many of you will know, she's a freelance exec and a one-time commissioning editor at Channel 4 in Docs and Fact Ent. And she's worked on BAFTA award-winning stuff like Jamie's School Dinners, The Doctor Who Gave Up Drugs, and the RTS award-winning natural history feature Drowning in Plastic. So quite an incredible career, and she's doing bits and bobs of consultancy and exec work for lots of different companies in this time. And Faraz Osman, hi Faraz. Faraz, waving away, is the he runs an indie called Goldwaller, which is a couple of years old. He's the MD and head of creative there. He's also been very busy winning commissions in lockdown, including The Brilliant My Mates Are Muslim on BBC Three. If you haven't seen it, is it still online?
Yeah, I think they go online forever now. BBC Three just put things in the internet and it stays there forever.
Winning,
so.
That is winning. Yeah. It's brilliant and was commissioned and made within an incredibly short period of time in lockdown. So he works across all sorts of content, fact-ent, popular factual for broadcasters and also brands online. And Matt, hello Matt Rudge.
Yeah, you're right.
Eating your rich tea biscuits. I'm good, thanks, I'm good. Matt is an award-winning single film and series director on docs like The Chillenden Murders, House of Surrogates, Netflix's Drive to Survive, Banged Up, Millionaire Boy Racers, I loved that. And there's definitely lighter stuff in the background, I'm sure. It's not all just straight serious docs that he can tell us some amusing stories about. No. But he's an excellent director. We've known each other for a long time and he does some very, very cool stuff. And I imagine has had some very interesting experiences with contributors across the years. So all very impressive biogs. But looking at the title of this session, I can't imagine you've made any terrible decisions, you lot, or any embarrassing projects in your time, have you? I mean, we've all got stories to tell, but I don't know. Faraz, should we come to you first?
What? Are you kidding?
Come on, share. You need to share.
I think that, like, one of the reasons I started the company and one of the reasons I feel like I found a nice sort of space is a lot of TV is like, a lot of things at this level is about problem solving. So people only ever actually talk to execs and talk to company directors when there's something that's gone wrong and it needs to be fixed. And I actually quite like fixing problems. And I think a lot of that has been based around the fact that I've got myself into a lot of trouble and into a lot of problems in the past. I mean, there's been a kind of plethora of little things, and you know, some of the things that stand out as memories is leaving folders with release forms on top of cars and then driving off and then seeing them kind of like flutter all over the place, and like that wasn't a great time. We did a show once for a channel that will remain nameless, and that one probably was the biggest stress that I've had, mainly because it was a difficult program to work with from both sides. So, you know, the legal team, they had issues their side with their legal team and editorial team kind of infighting. Remember this mad meeting I had where I was sitting around a big, massive table in this, like, you know, very international company, and the legal team and the editorial team started bickering about a piece of creative that we had just pitched. And they're a bit like, you can't do that. And then the editorial team's like, you can do that. We're just kind of sitting there like a little indie in the middle, kind of going, just tell us what you want to do. And I think that, like, where things really go wrong and where it becomes stressy is when people, A, take themselves too seriously. We are just making telly and we should be making something that people enjoy. And B, they're just not collaborating. They're not talking to each other. They're all trying to get their own little fiefdom and make that work. But the things that kind of really do sort of coming together is when everyone kind of goes, look, we're in this together. We've got to make it work. We've got a TX date. Let's run with it. And then when the problems do come up, you just solve them and make it work. And that, I think, is part of the joy. But yeah, there's been a few moments of hand changing worry along the way.
Communication is it's one of the most important things in our industry, but it's also one of the things that's so difficult to get right, isn't it? Because people are often scared for their jobs or for their performance, aren't they?
I don't, you know what, I don't think it's just being scared about it. I think part of the systematic problem with telly, and this is kind of, you know, unraveling in this mad world we're in right now, one of the issues that we have is that things just kind of appear and disappear so quickly. Like, you'll meet people and then you'll be working with them, not just like 9 to 5, you'll be working with them 7 days a week, like in edits till 2 in the morning, and you only met them a couple of weeks beforehand. And, you know, there's no kind of moment where you learn their personalities and you learn their traits and you learn kind of like what their idiosyncrasies are. You've just got to kind of make it work. And as we kind of become more and more pressured in this world, that pre-production thing is just getting squeezed more and more and more. And I personally think has real issues. And it's been like, you know, that's why when we did My Mates Are Muslim, you know, we came to you because I think that I was really worried that we would bring a director on board and we wouldn't know who they are, and, you know, we'll be working remotely with them. And, you know, one of the briefs that we gave to you is that we want people that understand how we want to work and how we want to operate, because we're never going to meet them. And that's why, you know, that's why I kind of came to you to help us staff that up, because it was really important to me that we got the personalities right, because there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be things that go wrong. And the mark of, for me, people that I enjoy working with are people that flag those things early and come up with solutions and recognize that, like, we'll make it work, and don't try and, you know, hide things away and fix them and then it kind of, you know, spirals out of control. You've got to have teams that, you know, are working collaboratively.
I think that only works when the company you're working for has the right ethos, though, doesn't it? Dominique, have you had any sort of similar sort of the communication side of things sort of go wrong?
I'm sure I have. That wasn't my first story.
But it's important, isn't it, that people feel they can speak up if there's a mistake, or do you harbour it all yourself and try and deal with it yourself as a producer?
I mean, as he was talking, I was thinking, I'm probably like guilty of being one of those people. Like, quite often I'm working on, like, say 4 different productions with, say, maybe 2 or 3 different indies, and do I really make time and that sort of nice space for someone to feel safe enough to go, I fucked up? Because that's sort of what you can't just say to people, oh, be honest about your mistakes. You have to go as a manager, and, like, we hate that word, don't we? Because you're creatives, and no one's been taught anything about management. I was just a director, I was an AP, then I was a director, and then you just got sprung into the next job, but no one ever trains you or tells you what you're supposed to do. You just kind of bullshit your way through it until the bullshit becomes kind of real because you've done it enough times. Like, however senior you are, that's how it is. So I sort of think that, like, I'm probably need to think more about, do I give that space for people to come and go, I'm really struggling with this. Normally it's like they're not doing their job very well, and you wait until that point and then you go, what's going on for you? How are you managing? Is this okay? Because on the whole, budgets have been cut for, and I work on some of the most well-funded programs in television. So like it's miles worse on the tighter ones, but you're normally so up against it, as you say, you know, you've hardly got any prep time. You used to have a kind of a week where you kind of arrive and you get to read everything, and it's like now we send everything out to people before they start, and it's like you're supposed to start on day one kind of knowing what you're doing. So I think it's hard, but I think we all have to take responsibility, and I feel like that's something I want to do, is to make more space for people to grow and sort of learn and feel safe to say, I don't really know how to do this. That's something you've asked me to do.
Yeah, it's really important. I think there's definitely an atmosphere of that right now. I think people are really feeling that with this space and time out, actually there's a lot of things wrong with the industry, and there's a lot of things we could fix. And maybe there's something that this is sort of part of that, the sort of the ethos and the thought of how to improve things that could tie into, for sure. Matt, how are you, and how do you deal with things when they go wrong on a shoot, or do things never go wrong on Matt Rudge's shoots?
Not well. I mean, I've had no disasters, but then is that just rose tinted because once you've finished the project and it goes out, you forget about what's not in it because there's been a disaster? Probably. I suppose one of the things that is difficult in the sort of field that I do is I'm often, what they call a lone wolf, or a solo gunner often, and I'm filming possibly with one other person sometimes, and so I think you can feel really exposed if things go wrong, because you're sort of all engrossed in this project, and so it is really important that you feel you can flag things up. Mm-hmm. Because we've probably all worked for people where you think, I can't tell them, I'll take this on myself, and then it can just snowball and snowball and snowball. If we're talking about worst TV, or are we talking about things that have gone wrong? Because I've got stories about both. Especially early in my career, I worked on stuff that I don't want to be snobbish about it though, but stuff I wouldn't work on now. Mm-hmm. But I learned so much looking back. So I would say, if you're working on something that you think, oh, this is going to be the worst TV I've ever made or will ever make, there's still so much you can learn from it. Like I've done some terrible jobs that I hated, but I learned unconsciously or subconsciously, I think. I wasn't thinking at the time, this is great. I'm learning how to speak to people or contributors or whatever. But actually looking back now, I learned some amazing skills on some pretty shoddy shows.
Can you think of any examples, not necessarily of productions if you don't want to name them?
One of the things that's been flagged up is you're thrown into jobs with people. So I'm not going to mention specific jobs because you always meet those people later on.
Yeah.
But I worked in, before I worked in documentaries, I worked in all sorts of jobs. I started as a runner, and I was a researcher, and I did a lot of daytime. And I worked on a chat show, and it wasn't Jeremy Kyle, but it was that sort of world. It was quite, you had to chase stories that there was some conflict in, and it wasn't perhaps as confrontational as that. And I hated it. I genuinely didn't like it. But I learned, and I still use this all the time, I learned how to find people and stories, because there wasn't Facebook back then, there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't, you know, if you wanted to find someone or you wanted to find a story, you would literally have to pick up the phone and you would phone pubs. Do you know anyone that thinks like this? Or you would phone, I don't know, a community centre, or, and so there is this sort of pressure, but looking back, it was quite a good learning curve. And often you'd see someone in a magazine and you'd think, that's an amazing story, how can I get hold of her? Well, nowadays it's a bit easier, but back then you'd literally be looking for clues. Oh, she lives in this area. And you'd phone pubs, or
Yeah.
you'd phone.
I remember phoning fish and chip shops.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for wife swap.
Don't suppose you know of a Jenny that comes into your shop, do you? That's got 2 kids and has recently had to leave her house because of a poltergeist. And, you know, and you know, 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, no, what are you talking about? Sometimes they'd be like, oh yeah, Jenny. Oh yeah, I'll give you a number, or you know.
So yeah, amazing kind of tracking skills, and then it knows for story stuff, even though at the time you were hating every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't hating every minute of it, but
wondering why you're in telly, probably.
I was just like, this is a real conveyor belt, and but you know, it did open up doors. And it was one of those things that people say, oh, if you've got that on your CV, you've kind of been through it. And, you know, we know you can find stories. So
I think that's all really good points. And so people actually at a more junior level who might be watching this.
I always say the job you've got now is not the job you're going to be doing in 5-10 years time. It's literally just I know it's a cliche, but it is a step, isn't it? It's a rung on a ladder. And
you have to get everything out of it that you can, like you say, don't try and use that for the skills that you could learn for the future. And
also it might be in a genre that you really don't want to work in eventually. But I don't know about the other people on this, but I'm always amazed at people I've worked with in one genre, and then I'll bump into them 5 years later and they're like really successful in something completely the opposite of what I thought.
Yeah, I think Matt's absolutely right. And I think the other thing is as well is that like I echo, there's some experiences that I've had that like I just wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable cold calling people and trying to, you know, get them to appear on TV so we can tell their story, and you know, it just wasn't my personality. But then I've met some people that absolutely love it. And it's just, and I think that again, it's one of the joys of working in TV that the best people I find have gone through a number of things that they haven't enjoyed doing to kind of find a thing that A, they're good at, and B, that they do actually enjoy doing. And I think that, you know, you should, just because some people say to you, oh, that sounds like the worst job in the world, there are other people out there that kind of go, that sounds like, you know, that detective work, that kind of like, you know, being a modern day Sherlock Holmes and trying to find out the person that seems elusive. People get a real kick and a buzz out of that. It wasn't for me, and it's not for me, but there are some people out there that, like, if that's what you feel like you want to do, then you should absolutely go down that path. You don't have to be a kind of, you know, a big feature-length documentary director, and that's the only ambition you should have. There are loads of different things that you can do, and just try them out and see if they work for you. And then don't feel bad or guilty. I mean, that's the thing that I had to learn. Like, you know, it's a thing that, you know, haunted me for a long time, was a bit like, I'm not very good at this. And does that mean I'm not very good at telly? And it's a bit like, no,
right.
not very good at that. That's just not very good at that job. And, you know, that includes some of the stuff that you and I worked together on in Kimberly. In my earlier days, there were things that I was working on in the production company that we met that I just wasn't very good at. And it makes you feel really insecure. It makes you feel like, oh no, I'm shit at telly and this isn't the industry for me. And then suddenly you work with a team and you get given responsibilities that are completely different. You might have the same job title, but you have completely different responsibilities and approaching and producing a program in a completely different way. And you just find your lane. And then you just kind of start excelling. And I think that
I suppose that's the joy of, at least with as a freelance industry, of course there are negatives, but that's a positive, isn't it? Because it means that you do get to chop and change your contracts and you're not stuck in a job that you're going to be in for sort of 10 years time. Dominique.
It was kind of one of my points as I was thinking about like the worst TV and the mistakes I've made, and sort of what you can get out of it. We're very, you can, having more or less, I had one patch as a commissioner, that was about the only time, 6 years doing that. That's the only time I've ever had a proper job, been on PAYE, had paid holidays. The rest of my career has been entirely freelance. And I think at the moment, it's a tough time. I'm not working. Lots of people aren't working. It's tough being a freelancer at the moment. And, you know, there's an element where you can feel sort of betrayed by the industry. I think you take the broader view and I look back on my career, I feel like I curated a career in a way that has adapted to different elements of my life as they've changed, in a way that, as if I wasn't a freelancer, that would have been so much harder, or I would have been at the kind of the mercy of whatever it was, the company that I worked for. I mean, I don't mean there's any freelancer at the moment who isn't thinking, God, all my mates have got normal jobs, proper jobs, and they're furloughed, and they've still got their pension, and they've still got everything. And I'm like, look at me, you know, what am I doing? I've just got such insecurity. But then I look back, you know, my first main job I did as a series producer was Jane's School Dinners. And Robert Thurkel rang me, who I didn't know. And I'd just done single docs at that point. I'd done like, you know, I was a kind of very much like you, Matt. I was a kind of single director, just did the thing on my own. And he rang me and he said, oh, I've got this thing with Jamie Oliver. And I was kind of, I hate presenters. I don't do presenter things. I'm a doc maker. I really don't want to work with presenters. And then he said, oh, it's about school dinners. And I was like, oh, it seems really boring, you know. And I had 2 little kids at the time, and I just got divorced, and I just moved from Leeds to London. So I had like my mum round the corner, but that was about, I didn't have any childcare, didn't have any support, didn't have any mates. And I stupidly thought, and this is one of my mistakes that turned out to be quite a good thing, but I thought, oh, school dinners. So my kids haven't started school there yet. That'll be like in the daytime then. So I'll be able to direct just like in school hours. So that's going to be brilliant for me as a sort of newly single mum. Kids are like 2 and 3. But what I didn't bank on was Nora, the dinner lady, who sort of turned out to be one of the main character of that series. I don't know, a lot of people haven't watched it because it was such a long time ago. But she was like this star character, and she was obsessed. And she would get to the kitchen at like 5:30, and it was incredible. So I ended up like, it was like the most taxing job I've ever done. And I ended up running that series and running a national campaign to change school dinners. And it was the hardest job I've ever taken. So I made it like, I made such a bad decision based on, I want to be around for my kids. You're a director, once you start, you can't stop. But my point is, like, straight after that, as a freelance, your job comes to an end, and that can feel scary, but it's also like brilliant. Now I've got to do something where I'm home for my kids. So that's then when I was like, luckily I got offered the commissioning job. But if I hadn't been offered the commissioning job, I would have just found something that suited my life at that time. And that didn't feel like I had to leave a big institution or do a big negotiation, because it's sort of part of the structure of the freelance world. And now, like last year, my boys both left home, both went to university. So it was my first, September last year was my first year having no children in the house. And I took a job, the British tribe next door. I ended up living 7 weeks in a tent in Namibia with no running water. And it was kind of like, oh, I can do this now. And I don't think there's many careers. So you've got the bad points, obviously the uncertainty, and I'm not diminishing that. I think it's really, really tough. But you do have, if you play it right, like now I can do those sort of jobs. So if you're a mum and you might go into development for a bit, I went into development for a bit, I went into producing a bit so I didn't have to go, but then you can go back into directing when the kids start school again, or like when your kids leave home, it's like I could direct a film now because I don't have any kids at home. So I think you can curate a career in a way that I think there aren't many industries where that is the case.
You've made me think about a CV in a really different way. And if I look at yours, I would sort of now be able to associate almost the times of your life then with the projects that you took on.
But do
She wasn't that bothered.
you think, because I've had to adapt to having kids and you know, also things like this, you are quite thrown by circumstances, and whilst that's a good thing in a way, often when you send a CV out, people don't know that, do they? So they might, you know, and you get a lot of snobbishness. You go, people will look at and they'll go, oh, he did that, and that, and then what did he do that for? And you think, you know, so I think whilst it's good in a way, people can't read that on a CV.
I hate
That's true.
TV. I hate them. I think that they are a thing that we adopt from other industries and try and make work in our industry. And the problem with CVs is that they don't reflect what the skills of that particular individual, and they don't also reflect what that person wants to do. And unfortunately, and this is true for running a production company, you're only ever known for the last thing that you've done. So people are like, oh, you did that, so that means that you could do this. And it's a bit like, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to do that again. I had a bad experience. But because it's at the top of your CV, because everything has to be in chronological order, you suddenly get yourself into these kind of horrible loopholes where you're not loopholes, but like, you know, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that's really personally quite problematic. And I think that if you're ever speaking to somebody about a role or you're wanting to apply for a role, the first question I always ask people is, tell me what you want to do and tell me what you don't want to do. Because if you just look at someone's CV, the assumptions that you make immediately, again, being a freelancer, working on 3-month jobs here and here, you're like, oh, this person, you know, loves doing things in education, or this person loves doing things in motorsport, or and it's like, no, it's just what happens that I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that. And actually what I really want to do is build my skills in this area. It's hard. Like, again, one of the problems with this industry is that you're turning around so quickly that you do have to make those snap judgments, and you do have to be quite prejudiced in looking at someone's CV and seeing if they have, you know, the space and experience to do the job that you want them to do. But I really believe that we have to get into a situation where we're speaking to people about both their personalities, but what they think they're good at doing. Because I think that, you know, the worst jobs that I've done, you know, not necessarily TV programs, the worst jobs that I've done are ones where I've got into work and I'm not enjoying it, but then I go out afterwards and people are like, oh my God, that job sounds amazing, or I watched that show, or that's wicked. And you kind of feel like you have to be grateful for it, if that makes sense. And you then suddenly are in a role in a job that you're not into. And I think that that's really, really problematic. I think people just need to be, you know, more honest and upfront in the covering letters or in the starting conversations they have with people, to kind of go, look, this might be on my CV, but, you know, yeah, this show wasn't great. And, you know, a couple of people that I've spoken to recently are like, tell me about that show, because I wasn't into it, so I want to hear it from your perspective. And they're like, yeah, I thought about taking it off my CV because I didn't think it was a good representation of what I want to do either.
Such a good point. I really think that is a very valid point, and that your CVs are like that the idea that the CVs actually don't really fit telly, because they don't really, do they? They really don't. And, you know, it's a constant battle of ours here is to try and you know, convince a potential employer exec, who in turn then has to convince a commissioner that this person is right. And we have the extra intel on these people and the conversations that we've kind of had, the pre-interviews, if you like, and the relationships perhaps, or, you know, those initial chats. And so we know why they're good for this role. But if a client is only going to open the CV and do a 5-second cursory, boom, no, they haven't got exactly the right program on their CV. So no, then it doesn't work, does it?
Also,
I remember when...
Sorry, Matt.
No, go on.
Sometimes you get people who've done like loads of things that are the same as yours, and they're just a bit rubbish because they've just done it loads of times before.
Yeah, where's the creative thought?
I mean, someone who we both know, Kim, Robert Thurkel, he was like a mentor to me. Most of you watching, unless you're quite old, won't know him, but he was at the BBC, and he was in some ways a complete nightmare and in other ways a complete genius, like lots of people can tell you. And he said he's never won a BAFTA unless the person doing the main creative role, it was the first time they've ever done it, that role. So every BAFTA he's won, he's employed somebody in the main creative role who never done it before. Not never made telly, but like when I did school dinners, I was never a series producer before, or gave them a directed their first ever thing. And I know that's not entirely true, and it's much harder these days because people are so much less more risk averse, aren't they? But you at your peril, you take someone on who's done the same subject matter as yours the last 3 times, because it's not always, they're not fresh to it or they're not excited by it. Just to add to Faraz's point, and I don't know if this is like a bit teaching grandmother to suck eggs, but just to make the point, like I don't particularly think it's great when you're doing an interview or sending a letter where you say that you really want to do something and why you really want to do it. I do think you have to sort of turn around a bit and go what you can bring to it, because at that point it is, on the whole, it's a buyer's market. So it's just such an easy technique that so many people don't do, even quite experienced people. They tell you why they want the job and why the job is good for them, or why that subject matter, or they want to get their shooting better, so they want a shooting role. And like, to be mean, I'm thinking, I don't want you to be learning on my production because it's like a BBC 190, or like it's like, this isn't the nursery slopes type, unless you know someone really well. But if you don't say it like that, but you just give them all the things that you can bring from the other jobs and why it's good for them to take you on. I mean, it's probably like such a basic thing, but it's such a good thing to remember.
Yeah, I think this industry is rubbish at both interviewing and being an interviewee. You know, no one, how many people how many interviews have you guys done where the employer has actually said, why should I hire you for this job? You just have a chat, you have a nice chat about your CV, and then that's all then based on personality, isn't it then?
Well, I think, sorry, go.
I was going to say, while we're on this, what about, you know, if we've taken CVs from other industries and they don't quite work, also references in this industry are very, you know, it's very strange, because you're often, freelancers are put into a project for 3 months and it's very stressful, and then their next job relies totally on someone they've either hardly worked with, but they've heard a bit about this person, or on occasions have had difficult conversations, because it's a creative industry, isn't it? And so I often wonder about how references, I can see how valuable they are when I'm,
Oh no, that's the hypocrisy.
At the same time, you know, you wonder what people would say about you, don't you?
Yes, you do. There isn't right. It's a very grey area, as everyone calls it. It's not illegal to do what we do, but it's not really okay either, ethically. But it's going to continue happening in terms of references, isn't it? But to bring it back round to telly and mistakes, and actually something Dominique just said about Robert Thurkel. It's something that he had taught my series producer exec and I when we were doing a project a while back, is that when it's wrong, it's right. Thinking about a shoot, if something's going wrong, try and make it right. So have any of you guys got examples of that happening where you've sort of used that idea? Matt, go on. Give us a couple of.
I remember my first hour film. So it's and like I said, as a director, you know, a producer director on like singles, you're taking on quite a lot. And I remember it was about I'll name this one. It was called The Autistic Me, and it was about 3 teenagers on the autistic spectrum, and it was about that moment where you transition into adulthood, and how, you know, it's all magnified when you're on the spectrum, and also it's slightly out the timeline, you know. And I remember one of the characters, Ollie, he was let go from his job, and that was going to be part of his big narrative, because he wanted his first ever proper job, and he temped at this place, but then they let him go, and it affected him so much. And we were filming at the time that he dropped out, and he was just like, his mum called me the next day and she said he doesn't want to do it anymore. You know, he's been through a rough time. And I was devastated, because he was this amazing guy and character, and was able to put things into words that maybe the other characters I was following weren't able to.
Had you done quite a lot of filming with him up to this point?
Yeah, we were sort of like halfway through, so the worst point. But actually, I mean, the great thing about this kind of doc, when it's slightly authored, is we ended up making that part of the story. And so in the end, we managed to get him back on board, but there was a big time gap. But then that sort of reunion scene, when he was like, yeah, I was feeling a bit like this, it became sort of part of the narrative. And it actually really potentially made the film, because you'd got to this crux where in a lot of, especially factual fact-end, you'd never see that. You'd never see a character just go, I've had enough, you know, that's it.
Yeah, it feels sort of risky and wrong, doesn't it?
You go, I've come back to see Ollie. He's let me see him one more time. And then he sort of, yeah, it just became this nice little 2-act.
Yeah, that's lovely. And like I said, but it takes quite a lot of balls to go, I'm going to keep filming, or I'm going to, you know, not in that sense, not in the moment, but I'm going to keep trying to film, doesn't it? Because you feel like, and certainly I know earlier on in my career, I felt like if I was filming someone who was crying about something, or who was having a strop about something that perhaps we had done as a crew, you just want to switch it off and hug them and make it okay. But something, you know, I learned over my career was to keep filming, you know, as long as you felt ethically it was okay, or even to state, I'm going to keep filming this, but let's talk about it, unless they really said absolutely no.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I did. I kept, I mean, no, I'm not going to lie that I kept filming everything, but I managed to film something to make a scene out of the fact that I then had to leave, the door closed in my, not in my face like slammed, but it was closed. And so it became, you know, slightly meta. I mean, it was like the film was part of the film.
Yeah.
It's hard to do in not a single narrative, because, you know, that I do say to my teams a lot, when it's wrong, it's right, and it's quite annoying. Although I
just want it to be right, actually.
But it's such a good thing to remember. And just the other day, I forgot it. I'm in the middle of a BBC One beach doc, and I had a team in Brazil, and it was a 9-day shoot, and 2 days in, I mean, it was in the beginning of COVID, and we were sort of, oh, should we send them? And then let's just get it under our belts. We ended up bringing them back, and now I'm stuck with like 2 days worth of really good filming, and it's not going to make sense when we get going again. And I didn't follow my own, you know, and Kimberly said the worst mistakes I've made. I'm like, literally the other day, I forgot to say, why don't you film a bit of having to scramble, try and get out of Brazil? Because I was so worried about getting the team home. They were so worried about their families. You're caught up in that sort of panic, and that you're not, you know, your priority isn't the film. But it wouldn't have been that hard to just film a bit at the airport and just go. I had a presenter, he could have said, I'm at the airport. I so could have done it, and I totally messed up. I didn't think of it. No one on the team thought of it. But I was in the calm place back in the UK, and I should have said, just film a bit of the fact that you've had to scramble home, and then the whole film will fall into place.
Yeah, I think Dominique's right. I think that's good execing. That's somebody that's like away from the shoot, that can see the bigger picture and go, okay, look, I understand all of this is going on. Like, you know, just have you checked all of these boxes effectively? And again, the pressure of you feeling like it's all on your shoulders and you have to fix everything, that's when things go wrong. I think that you should always lean on people who are not necessarily there at the time, just to take their advice, test the temperature, and see if there's anything you've missed.
But even if you do remember to do it, it often gives you, like Matt said, your best scenes. When we were shooting Tribe, the British Tribe Next Door, and we'd set out the whole, like in a fact tense or way, you've written your scripts, you've got them signed off by, honestly, 1 million people. And then was like, Scarlett's going to dress, you know, they're going to say, oh, we want you to dress up, and, you know, because they'd said as soon as we arrived in the village, oh, she can dress up like us and we can do a dance. And she got there and she was like, no fucking way I'm wearing their things and blah, blah, blah. And she kept walking, you know, it was like, it was really tense, and all your instinct was like, stop. But we got just enough, and like everyone was obsessed with, we're not going to get the dance for the end of the episode. That was not going to be an end of part one, episode one. But actually, there wasn't a dance at the end of part one, but there was this very real thing going on between them, just having no sense of why. They sort of got why she didn't want to get her boobs out. They got that, but they didn't get why she didn't want to get her tummy out, or why she didn't want to, like, where, you know, it was just that sense that we have about our body and the shame we have about our body just gave us like such a better, like we explored the theme in a better way. And it's, you scrabble around and you're not shooting it properly. And so I think it can work in fact. And I think Thurkel's point, just to go back to yours, Kimberly, that when it's wrong, it's right. Not because when it's wrong, it's right, but because when it's wrong, there's jeopardy and there's drama and there's emotion. And it sort of doesn't matter what's happening. The worst thing when you go back from a shoot is you shot everything you planned to shoot, because chances are there's no jeopardy, there's no drama, and there's no emotion.
Yeah.
Any scene with those, then you work backwards. All right, I didn't plan that. How can I, like you said, the closing the door, and how am I going to make that work in the edit? How am I going to fit that in? Work backwards, think what you need each side of it. But the hardest thing in the world to get is drama and emotion, and never turn your back on it. Just always
don't waste it.
I'm such a strong believer in like the emotions that the crew have, like always filter down onto screen. And if you're shooting something and it feels boring, the show's probably going to be boring. Like if you're not having fun, if you don't feel like there's some drama going on behind the scenes, if you're not getting stories that you're going to tell your mates when you kind of speak to them later on, that the likelihood is all you're doing is painting by numbers, and that's never great. You know, always looking for those things. And it's why it's really important to me that when we put teams together, we always check in on them and make sure they're having a good experience. Not just because we want to be decent employers, but, you know, kind of selfishly, it means the product that we're going to deliver at the end of the day to our client is probably going to be better, because we know that the team have both put their all into it, and also they're enjoying what they're making, which says that we're kind of making something that's decent.
And Faraz, what about you? In the past, have you made things that you feel have had a significant kind of shape of to who you are now, and you know that you, while you were making it, you were thinking this is dreadful? I think that when things go wrong, that's when you do learn from stuff. I think that, like, you know, we have kind of created an industry, again, because of the timelines and the budgets and the way things work, that is, you know, as I mentioned earlier, painting by numbers. But when things don't quite go according to plan, that you have to use those moments and kind of go, right, this is the moment where I'm going to learn the most amount of stuff, and I might get in trouble, or I might not deliver what I was expected to deliver, but this isn't going to be the end of my career. If anything, these are the things that are going to make my career. And you've got a problem solve. You've got to work with the people around you to fix those problems. And, you know, I think that that's where earlier on in my career, I fell down by kind of trying to fix it all myself, and, you know, trying to be infallible and avoid blame and all those sort of things. And it's a difficult thing to do. It's not easy to get right, but I think that you should put those experiences in your pocket, so that when you do speak to somebody about a role further down the line, you can say to them that, look, this is a shoot I did. This, a lot of like what the conversations we've had here, this is a shoot I've done. This is where something didn't quite go according to plan, and this is what we did to fix it. Because that's when you know, as an employer, that, okay, we may experience the same sort of things, and this person has got the right sort of mindset to kind of go, right, this is how I'll fix that problem. Whereas if it's a bit like, yeah, I've done that sort of show before, I can easily do this, so don't worry about it, I'm a safe pair of hands. I'm a little bit like, okay, cool, but like, tell me about what you're going to do when it's not going to go right. And the instinct is to kind of go, don't worry, if you employ me, it will go right. But that's not really a helpful answer. You know, the answer you want to do is kind of go, you know, things don't always go like they shouldn't. It's telly. If they all went according to plan, then this wouldn't be a very interesting industry, and we wouldn't make very good programs. You know, we need to really scrutinize when things don't quite go right,
and find people that can learn from that. I ducked the question. No, I ducked the question of like, but it didn't work for me.
We sort of did, but actually you did talk about it a bit earlier, but I feel like actually from what you've said, and from the stuff that you used to make back when we were researchers, that was sort of more fact-tent formats and stuff, that you didn't have brilliant experiences or didn't love it, and actually that's probably shaped the sort of content that you make now, hasn't it? Because you are more online, populist, branded, as well as.
I think for me it's less about that and more about how we try and put together our teams and trying to have a flat structure and trying not to kind of go, I'm the exec, so I sit in a corner office and you're only ever allowed to speak to me when you've got good news. Like none of those things are helpful, I don't think, in my experience. And if I want to work with people that I think are talented and also I want to kind of enable them and empower them to kind of work in the way that I think, then I've got to kind of respect the experiences that I had previously. And it sounds like I'm making out that I had a awful time when I was like starting out. That's absolutely not the case. It's just that when things go wrong, you remember them more. They like stick in your brain more. But yet when we have interviews and we put CVs together, you try and pretend that little voice and put them in a box and don't tell anybody about that because that's awful. But it's a bit like, well, they're stuck in your brain for a reason. They're stuck there because you've learned from them. And we have to encourage, for me, like we have to encourage more people to talk about those experiences, not just for their mental health in working in this industry, but also that like I have had experiences, I've done shows and they've gone quite well, so I need to have people on the team that've got experience of dealing with something when they don't quite go right, because then that's going to be a great asset to the team I put together.
Yeah, I think there's lots of little takeaway bits that I've been scribbling down that we'll recap on. I'm going to look at some of the comments so far, actually. And then if anybody's got any questions, just chuck them out. We've probably got 10 more minutes. So do ask away. People agreeing with your point, Faraz, about CVs, not always. Paddy, hello. The CVs don't always reflect the skills of the individual. And too often people want people who've just done one type of job, one type of role, one type of show. And I think we all agree that it's irritating and annoying and actually probably suffocates the creativity, because transferable skills in telly are massive, and you just don't want someone to have done exactly the same thing again and again. Again, it's that risk aversion, isn't it? And Anna Ludecker, thank you for joining us. She says she remembers sewing buttons on a costume as a runner on a live entertainment show and hating it. But she now realizes it actually gave her basic understanding of live OB etiquette and structure that came in handy years and years later. I know that, I've got some seriously
I remember doing the production manager's laundry run as part. Well, literally, I'd be handed a bag of laundry.
What, personal laundry, not for the shoot?
Yeah, but it's taught me how not to treat runners.
My first research job, my director, and I won't say who it was, my job was to carry her bag. Like she literally, I'd arrive at the shoot, like it wasn't like she was carrying the camera or the legs or anything. She literally handed me like whatever shit she had that she brought with her, like I had to carry it.
Oh, wow. I remember one of my worst runner jobs.
Get on with it. Like she was not to just think I'm going to learn, but like never going to ask anyone to carry my bag.
That's it. I was always a bit too keen as a runner. And I remember being on Fame Academy and getting on talkback, tons of runners all over the place. And someone came over the talkback to say, runners, we need someone like in the next 2 minutes to go and clear up all the fag butts from outside the main front door because we're about to do jib shots. And it was a cobbledy courtyard. All the crew had been standing there smoking, little fag butts all over the ground. And I just went, I'll do it. And then went and did it. No gloves, no nothing. It was disgusting. And there were tons of them. But I think I got a bit of kudos, and I would never ask anyone to do that again. I would definitely be putting a sign up to say, please clear up your own blooming fag butts, people. Gross. But yes, runner stories are brilliant and definitely shape the character of what we are. I'm sure my mum always said to me, it's just character building, love. It's character building. Like,
yeah. But it doesn't feel like that at the time, doesn't it? Does it? But
no.
But I think sorry, I was going to say, I do think that we have to get over this kind of culture of, oh, this is what TV's like. We have to get better at calling it out and kind of going, I just don't think this is right. I don't think that people should be behaving in this way. It's difficult to do. But I think that, again, because we move around so much, getting people to kind of go, you know what, I did a runner job previously and I had to hold somebody's handbag. I'm not going to do that again because I don't think that's what this job is about. You know, you don't have to confront that person, but I think that we do need to kind of speak more openly about it. It shouldn't take us 30 years in the industry to then talk about, you know, bad practice further down the line, because that's not going to change things quickly enough. Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox, but I just get really pissed off about like the entitlement that people have, that because then it's a bit like, now I'm at the top of the line and I'm going to wait. And, you know, when I speak, I've heard it from people, I'm an exec now, get that runner to make me a coffee. It's a bit like, who the fuck do you think you are? That's not, it's not okay. It's like, that's not what they're there to do. And you're not going to breed the next generation of talent if you're going to exploit them in that way.
I think it has got better though, hasn't it?
I don't know, Dom, or is it because you're more senior now and you don't see it?
Is it because we don't see it, or?
I definitely don't ask anyone to hold my bag or make me.
No, I think people might be more prone to call it out now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so. I feel that this particular environment right now that we're sitting in is giving people the confidence to do that kind of thing, I think.
But I think that the mistake can be to kind of call it out in that moment, because if you just call it out in that moment, all you're going to do is kind of create hostility and create frustration when you're on a shoot, and that's not helpful to, you know, it's, unless obviously it's something that is significantly, you know, malpractice and you do need to call it out. But if there's an experience where, you know, picking up fag butts, you could argue is part of a runner's job, right? But like then feeding that back later on and saying, look, if you're going to ask people to do this, you know, a couple of weeks later, can we just get some gloves on set? Can we just make sure that, like, you know, is there a way that we can stop this from happening? Because then that's going to help people further up kind of going, oh, I didn't realize it was such a problem. Yeah, of course we should put a sign, or let's get an ashtray there or whatever. And then it just helps everybody along the way.
Yeah, it's speaking up, isn't it? And also thinking intelligently, and all of those things do wonders for your for how you come across as well. It's initiative, isn't it? And confidence as well. So that's all really good. People agreeing with you, Faraz, about calling things out. It's very important.
Somebody's going to say, you made me carry your bag, aren't they? I'm just waiting for a comment. It's a bit like, hang on a minute, you definitely asked me to carry my
totally. Paul Rigby, thank you for your comment. He says, I've seen plenty of job ads which state must have XXX experience, usually blue light or property or something, you know, specific. And why would people want to block out so many options who don't have that experience on their CV already?
Because they're scared, because they're risk averse, because they think they're told from the channel, we want it a bit like this, but a bit like this. So they go, oh, let's get people that have only worked on that and put it together. I mean, look, the truth is in documentary, your skills are completely transferable project to project, because often it's about your relationship with the people that you're filming with contributors, with the skill of how you're directing it. It's not necessarily the fact that you've done something with a blue light before. But yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. And
yeah.
I just want to, on the flip side of that, I've been one of those people that have written those adverts where, like, you know, the way things from the time you get commissioned to the time you have to hire and get into production is so short that, like, you have, as a production company, you have to look at the risks along the way. And if somebody has got that experience and knows how to work with blue flashing light teams or knows how to put together those stories, that is a really, really key skill. And I think that when we put adverts together, we ask for a number of skills. We don't then go, we expect the person we hire to have every single one of those skills. But if somebody's got none of them, then they're not going to work. But if you've got like 2 of the 3, then that's really, really helpful, and kind of go, well, this is where my gap is. It's a bit like, fine, the researcher or the AP that I've got is going to support that director. And that's how you put teams together. But when you're putting out an advert, unfortunately, you do have to kind of go, this is the sort of show we're making. This is the sort of experience we would like. Come to us if you've got it. And I think to Dominique's point earlier, which I think is a really valid point, it isn't good enough to just go, oh, I want to learn on this job, and, you know, that's your interview. But I think it's a ratio thing. If you kind of come in and say, if you hire me, you'll get this X, Y, Z, you know, a great experience with these sort of contributors, brilliant shooting experience, and, you know, and an ability to do this. But the thing that I would like to work on this part of this production is I want to understand more about the edit workflow, and it would be great if I could sit in an edit so I can understand some edit producing skills. That candidate, that's going to be the one that I look at. And if you get that ratio right to kind of go, I can bring you this, I would like you to bring me this one thing, that's the person that's going to go at the top of my list.
Yeah, I think that's all really valid points and people agreeing. But apparently you're all talking a lot of sense. A great panel. So, you know, that's always good to know, isn't it? I know, it's not nice. I'm not sure anyone said anything like that to you for a while.
On the flip side, my flip side, if I would every day, hands down, choose someone that is better with contributors than someone that's done loads of blue light, but might not be as good with contributors. Because I know people that have done, I'm using blue light as an example, but blue light, blue light, blue light, blue light. But I wouldn't really always trust them to hang out with people and get great footage from them.
Yeah, perhaps they know the systems and protocols, but don't have the right people skills.
Yeah,
you couldn't assume that, could you?
X, Y, Z. But some things are just should be what you're told at the start of the production.
Yeah,
we need you to know who the line manager of this blue light firm is, and the protocol of, you know, how to get in the back of a police van.
Well, that stuff you can just learn, can't you? The other stuff I think you have built up or worked on or have it inherently.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, look, I'm probably going to start wrapping up now, but I feel like there's been so much stuff I've scribbled. No one trains you as a manager. You just chucked in a role. So, you know, I feel like that is relevant because I think it's okay to ask for help or to not know how to manage a situation. So if you're in a situation where something is going wrong, or you've taken a contract that I don't know, you feel out of your depth with or whatever, or you're managing people, that's sort of, although it's not a pleasant experience, it's also not, you're not alone in that. And I think the industry needs to get better at that. And we absolutely need some sort of training or some sort of mentoring program, even at the senior level, where people can actually talk and help and guide you as a manager, because nobody gives you those skills for sure. I feel like, what else have I written down? The CVs thing was very interesting with Faraz about, you know, TV CVs almost being quite, because we hop around so much as freelancer, you're not just as good as your last couple of contracts. So you need to always work hard to be able to explain and talk about the other projects that you've done in the past that shape you and what you want to be doing. And also, I think really valid point to take away from this is to speak up about your bad experiences. And that's sort of relevant to this, you know, panel type, this session title, in that if you do make mistakes, if there's projects that you're not proud of, it's okay. It should be okay to talk about those actually in the right time, in the right interview, in the right space, because it's something that will have taught you something as an individual and to help grow your career. And also, I do think you would get kudos for it. I certainly, if I'm interviewing somebody and they said, I'm great at this, I'm great at that, this project, do you know what I feel like I struggled with was on that contract a year or two ago was this, but actually I've done a load of shooting since then, and that's why I'm now better for it. And then also that kind of, go on, Dom.
Ask in every interview, what are you not good at? And women, I mean, I don't know if this is sexist or anti-sexist. You get in trouble, so shut me up, Kimberly, because you know me, I'll put my big foot in it. But women always tell you what they can't do and they can, and men very often tell you what they can do and they can't. And if you know that as someone who employs people and you take account of that, and obviously there's loads of exceptions, but on the whole, women give out what they're nervous about. So when I ask every single interview I've ever done, I've said, what are you not, so they talk about all the things you're good at and blah, blah, what are you not good at, what are you nervous about? Mostly so you can put someone on the team who is good at that. So you have to know that. And the worst thing is when someone gives you like a kind of interview example.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So on time. Sometimes I'm such a hard worker. I just don't stop. You're like, it's bollocks. So now you're a freelancer, because I would rather know, and I will sort of take you, I'll respect you for your honesty. But I think you also have to allow for different personalities. Some people will, and often people will say they're not good at things, and they're not good at them. They're not just as brilliant at that.
Yeah.
They are, some people put themselves down, and that's, I think all women out there who are listening, because I always wanted like help balance out, particularly in directing, which I think I know is a bit of a theme at the moment. There just aren't as many women directors, and I think we just criticize ourselves a lot more and point out in interviews, even quite senior women with huge amounts of experience, point out all the things they can't do, all the things they're nervous about. And sometimes in an interview context, that can work against them. I'm not saying don't point out your mistakes in the way Faraz is saying, in a sort of positive way and what you've learned from it, but just be careful that you're not in an interview where basically you want to get the job and then sort it out. Don't like focus too much on the things you can't do. That's what, you know, get the balance right.
Be more confident. Yeah. And then I think way down at the junior end of the scale, it sounds like, you know, we have all four of us done jobs that we probably wouldn't have chosen, we wouldn't choose now, but that's okay. And you won't be doing that job. As Matt said, you won't be doing that job in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. Every contract you have is a learning process, and you might not love it, but you've got to take away what you can from it, and all the amusing stories that you'll get for years to come down the pub about working on that particular ridiculous thing. When we're allowed out in pubs again, exactly. So yeah, I think there's been a lot to take away from this. Thank you all for your honesty. Any last things to add that I haven't covered? No, you're all done with me now. You're going to go and lie down in a cold room.
I think the only thing I would say is, like, two things. I think that these things are really, really useful, and that's one of the things that's been a positive out of this kind of crazy situation that we're in, that we as a kind of community talk more openly about who we are, because that's when you get to know people. And this opportunity to kind of, like, you know, get on these calls, you don't have to be in a meeting, you don't have to kind of have an interview anymore. The kind of more you get to know people and what they're about and what their company is and the sort of commissions they want to make, that's really, really useful. And I think that's something that we should all, you know, take forward whenever we get out of this hellscape that we're in now. And also I think that it's a real sense of just understanding that it can't be the same. So when you have an experience with one company or one sort of program or one sort of team, the next thing that you do will be different. Some of it will be better, some of it will be worse. And that includes when you're applying for jobs. If you apply for a job in one particular way and you're successful, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right way. It was just the right way for that moment. And I think you've got to be resilient and patient for that it's always going to be different, and you just got to kind of represent yourself in the best way.
Sound advice. Wise words for us. When did you get so wise?
When I stopped working with you, that's when. No,
oh, well, look, lovely to see you, everybody. All of you freelancers watching, thank you so much, and massively appreciate your time, Dominique, Matt and Faraz, yeah, for coming along to these sessions. We love having your company. It's so nice to read your comments, and if you missed any bits of this or any of our previous ones, they're all on our website, talentedpeople.tv. And there's the sessions page on there, and keep an eye on our jobs board. Things are trickling through, we think. So, you know, movement is happening in the industry. So hang in there, everyone, and stay safe. And thanks again for coming along. See you later, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.